Hello. Welcome to Beyond ADHD, a physician's perspective. I am Dr. Diana Mercado-Marmarosh, a dedicated family medicine physician based in the heart of rural Texas. I once saw my ADHD as a hindrance, but now I recognize it as a unique gift that empowers me to be the person I was always meant to be. Join me on this transformative journey as we explore how ADHD, anxiety, and depression can be understood, managed, and ultimately embraced. Over the years, I've learned that unlearning certain beliefs and habits is just as crucial as learning new skills, and I'm excited to share these insights with you. Join me as we engage in candid conversations with experts, exploring actionable strategies to thrive amidst these conditions. Together, we'll uncover practical insights that extend beyond the confines of traditional medicine, unlocking the true potential of a fulfilled life. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey. Well, hello. I am so excited today. We have a really special treat. We have Elaine Taylor-Klaus. She is, I don't even know where to start. All accomplished, amazing person who is a coach, who is a parent, who has too many degrees for me to keep up with, but she's here today as an amazing resource that I hope that if you are a parent who has kids with ADHD, you will definitely look into her stuff, or you yourself have ADHD and want to understand yourself better and communicate with others, you definitely look into her. But she's here, and it's a really joy and treat to have her here today. I met her a couple of years ago at a chat conference, and I started reading some of her books, and we actually are gonna be doing a presentation together at this chat conference in November. So if you're coming to that, you better stop at our booth because we're gonna be doing amazing stuff together. But without further ado, Elaine, would you tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you started on all this amazing journey?
Thank you. It's super great to be here, and I appreciate. I'm honored by that introduction. I don't have as many degrees as you do, just so you know. Um, but I have spent a lot of time building my way up through the coaching world, so I do have that. What do? I am the mom of three complex kids, now young adults, four young adults, one's married. And I do this work of supporting parents and professionals with complex kids because those first 10 years of parenting those kids was really hard and I wasn't doing it very well. Even though on the outside it probably looked like I was, on the inside I felt like it was like a house of cards, like things were falling apart any moment. And the long story short is I was really struggling and I was introduced to coaching and it was transformational for me. And so when I became a coach, it turned out I became a really much better parent and it wasn't rocket science. And so at one of the international conferences on ADHD, I met Diane Dempster, who had a similar story. But I do have ADHD and she did not. And it worked for both of us. And so we decided to come together and see if we could do something. We were just going to do a workshop. And long story short, now almost 15 years later, we have a global company supporting parents and professionals all over the world using neurodiversity informed coaching skills. And the secret to what we do is we teach people coaching skills and we coach them to use them. And it's changed the playing field for a lot of people's lives and impacted really millions of people, which I find extraordinary. But this stuff really works. Like it really makes a difference in the way that we support people with ADHD and the kinds of challenges that come along with it, because it's an empowerment-based way of being in the world. And people with neurodivergence really need empowerment in a big way.
Yeah. And I know that, and this is kind of off topic, but I just want to bring this up that you have the opportunity or the challenge to help your daughter, who's a medical student now, right? As she's
Yeah.
navigating this thing with ADHD. And I know we had a conversation about this, how I've told you that sometimes it's frustrating when you're a medical professional that other people don't understand the importance of different accommodations or the importance of having the right tools to help you to succeed in this medical world. So that it's my dream that every practice has an ADHD doc or nurse practitioner or some type of healthcare professional so that it can make
like the flexibility and the ingenuity be better, like so that people can just function and be more flexible. So I know that
So true.
for those who don't understand how we are connected in so many different ways, we are connected in so many different ways. And so I just wanted to bring that up because if you're a medical student who's listening to this, like there's still hope, and do tune in so that you can see that some of the things that we're about to talk about, even though, yes, it kind of pertains to kids, like we're kind of still parenting ourselves along the way all the time, right? So one of the books I wanted to talk about was Parenting ADHD Now. Can you tell us a little bit of background story on that book?
So Parenting ADHD Now was written because the publisher came to us and said, we want you to write a book on ADHD strategies. And they had some parameters they wanted to include. And I kind of negotiated a little bit and like, I will do that if I can write a chapter to begin it before we go into the strategies, if I can write something that explains what is ADHD, how does it show up, and what is recommended for treatment. Because I think that if we jump into strategies without really having some basic context, that it's not as effective. And so, and I think what happens, what we've learned over the years is parents come to us all the time wanting strategies, and strategies are great, but you have to understand why you're using the strategy and what you're trying to achieve. And so really getting the foundations of the who, what, when, where, how of the ADHD before you try to manage it can be really important. And so the other piece that I required was I wanted to create an organization structure that made sense for people with ADHD. You know, we're not always the most linear thinkers. I needed to create categories so that people could relate to it. So the book is designed around some of the key areas that people struggle with ADHD, but it's designed so that you can pick up the book anywhere and read and learn and gather something from it. You don't have to read it start to finish. But if you struggle with organization in your family, you can read that chapter. If you struggle with emotional management, you can read that chapter. If you're a teacher and looking for accommodations for students, you can read that. So it's really designed to make it very accessible.
Yeah, and I'm really hoping that all my, because I'm a family physician, and yes, I am still coaching, and also I am still doing family medicine, and I do diagnose ADHD every day. And this is a really good tool that I can tell like the parents, hey, I know you want strategies, but you have to understand that you have to be open to some medicine, or you have to be open to exercise, or you have to be open to strategies, and you need all of it. You don't need one part of it, because this is exactly what you and I are going to talk about. Like when we just focus on one little part of it, we miss like the opportunity of a complete model that can really help. And so this book, yes, it gives you the amazing strategies, like she says, from years of trial and error, and it's a quick way to start somewhere. You don't have to sit and read the whole book like most of the other books sometimes require us to do in order to gain the skill. But here you can go to the specific strategy chapter. You can go, like she's saying, to the attention part, or emotional regulation, or organization, right? And so that can be something you quickly glance at as you're working with your kid or yourself, and that strategy for that day, whatever is going on that day, then you can very well, it's like a Bible, okay? You can go look at it and then get out of it.
Right. Well, and I think what you're speaking to is so true. It's like ADHD is so much more complicated than people give it credit for, right? It is not just, you know, little girls staring out the window and little boys bouncing off the walls. It is so much more complicated than that. And so that means that understanding it takes a little bit more nuance, and then managing it takes a little bit more, not just nuance, but you get different things that show up at different times and on different days. And sometimes for the same kid, sometimes if you have multiple kids in the family, it's going to show up differently. And so every day is about meeting people where they are that day and knowing how to navigate. And, you know, if today is a down day and you're really struggling with effort and the emotional ability to get up and go to school, you're going to be dealing with something different than if you're dealing with impulsivity and trying not to talk out in class. And the same kid can struggle with both of those issues, But so as a parent, I think you're constantly dancing with, what are you dealing with now? And how do you want to handle what you're dealing with now? And that's why the first couple of chapters, that's why understanding it first becomes so important. And then you can begin to get the school skills to deal with all the different things that show up.
And especially practicing a self-compassion as a parent, right? Because we
Yeah.
sometimes, what would life have looked like had I gotten my own diagnosis first, or what would it look like had I known what I know now when I didn't know then, right? But like, it's easy to compare, but you have to start where you are, like you're saying, and realize where you are that day, you yourself, and then your kid as well, and have some conversations so that you can be an advocate for your kid at school. Because sometimes it's easy to label somebody as spoiled, or it's easy to label them as the class clown. But what if they're too embarrassed to ask for help and they rather just kind of act up, right? And
Well,
so,
sometimes any attention is better than no attention, right?
exactly, right? And so if you could like also advocate and go and say, hey, this is some of the skills that we are practicing at home this week to the teacher, like there's a class app that you can send, and then they could see, right?
Well, one of the things you're speaking to, I think is so important, is that we understand how important it is to advocate for accommodations at school, right? Um, and ideally, we teach our kids to begin to advocate for themselves. That's why, going back to my daughter, part of her success in med school and getting to med school was learning to advocate for herself, right? But what I think we forget is how important it is for us to create accommodations at home. And so as parents, we need to understand both environments, and we need to understand what are appropriate accommodations that level the playing field for each environment so that we can really set our kids up for success. And the goal isn't to get them to complete the task or turn in the homework or do the chore. The goal is to help them learn to manage themselves so that when they are independent, they can do those things on their own without being directed, without being, guided to do it, without being told. We want to set them up for independence and success. And that starts a lot younger than we realize. And it starts by kind of enrolling them in the process of problem solving for themselves instead of trying to fix it for them. But it's so tempting to fix it,
Yeah.
right?
And I think the key there is self-regulation, right? I think that's what you're alluding to, which again, if some of us who don't have those skill or those words, we don't know that that's what self-regulation is. Like, we just think life just happens and we're just going whack-a-mole, 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 trying to figure it out, right? But if, again, like you're saying, we realize, how can I modify this at home so that it's not frustrating for them, it's not frustrating for me? And the goal is not that, like you said, that the whole room is spot clean. The goal is that they have a place where they have all their shoes, or where they have all whatever they need, and they can go and hunt in one area so that they know it's their stuff. And you're not the one looking for them all over the house, because then you're frustrated the next morning where you're trying to get out, right? So
Right.
it's giving them some responsibility, but where it makes sense for both of you. And
Yeah.
again, this book is amazing because it will give you as a parent the strategies for yourself to be self-regulated, and it will help show up better for them as well.
Yeah. I thank you for that. I mean, I think that's really true, is that we can only manage what's going on with our kids if we are self-managed. And that doesn't mean you have to have all your ADD down pat. Like, I wasn't diagnosed till I was in my 40s. Lots of us weren't diagnosed till later. It doesn't mean you've got to be perfect or get it all right. It just means that when we start managing our own stuff, we can model for our kids what it means to manage our own stuff. And that means not getting it right all the time, but trying and improving. And we call it rinse and repeat, like revising it, and like trying something, seeing what works, taking the experimenter's mind. All of those things are so impactful for our kids if we practice it for ourselves without shame, without self-judgment. I think a big part of managing ADHD and raising kids with complex issues is self-care for parents. And a big part of self-care for parents is self-talk. It's how we talk to ourselves and about ourselves that makes such a difference. So when our kids hear us saying, I made a mistake on that, but I think I can fix that. This is what I need to do. They're going to have a very different response to perfectionism than when our kids hear us saying, oh, what an idiot. I can't believe I did that. Right? When
Yeah.
I beat myself up, my kids internalize that message.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's such a different, it seems like it wouldn't make a difference, but it does. It totally makes a world of a difference, because if you understand that it's normal and it's okay to make mistakes, because from mistakes we're learning, and from mistakes we're still going forward, and we're a step closer to where we wanted to get to. So either you get the goal that you needed or wanted, or you get the lesson that you needed or wanted, so that you can get to your end result, right?
Well, in fact, that's how the brain works. That's how humans learn, right? We actually learn better through mistakes than not. And in coaching, we call it failing forward, right? We talk about it at Impact, we talk about the magic 3 questions. What did work? What didn't work? What do you want to try differently? But when we recognize that it's the learning that actually comes from things not always going well the first time, that's a life skill that will take you for the rest of your life. People who cannot be with mistakes really struggle in life. I
Yeah.
remember my eldest kid said to me once as a teenager, don't you see, Mom, if I haven't done it, then I haven't done it wrong. And that really hit me. And I was sharing that with my youngest child's girlfriend recently. And I watched the tears well up in her eyes. She's in her mid-20s when she heard that, because she realized all the ways in which she has avoided doing things because of perfectionism and the fear of doing it wrong. And so we want to help our kids try things and not always have to be perfect at it in order to try something new. I can't tell you how many things in my life I didn't do because I was afraid I wouldn't do it well enough. And that's sad. I missed a lot of
Yeah.
opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah. And these are, again, I don't think, if we're not around a community who understand how the impact of coaching,
Yeah.
I think we would miss this. Like maybe we would get to it on our deathbed, right? But like we would have missed like 50 years of doing something and doing it wrong and learning and laughing about it and not taking ourselves too seriously and then going for it, right? So like if you're not in the arena and you're just on the sidelines, like waiting for the perfect opportunity, like the perfect opportunity might have came and went multiple times, but you didn't even
Right.
know because you didn't even step into dance, right?
That's right. Right. So the opportunity is now, wherever you are, whatever your age, whatever the age of your kids, it's right now. Like I have this framework I talk about, Diana, called up until now. The 3 words that can change your life. Up until now. Up until now, you've done the best you could with what you had. And you couldn't do anything better than what you already knew to do. And from here forward, when, as Maya Angelou said, when you know better, you do better, right? So from here forward, you can decide, I'm going to make mistakes, practice making mistakes, making it okay to make mistakes. I'm going to tackle perfectionism. I'm going to look at being in the process of managing ADHD and instead of only looking at outcomes. Whatever the shift is for you, whatever the one gem is that you take away from this conversation, that's your opportunity, your invitation to begin to do things just a little bit differently from here forward. And that's cascading impact. That's the ripple effect of, dropping a pebble in a pond. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, that's so good. Now, I know that you have done other books, Essential Guide, and would you mind sharing about a little bit about that one and for a few minutes? And we can always bring you back for a new podcast, because all of these books are amazing, and I know they would take a lifetime to go through them. But just give us a couple of pearls on that one.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to show it so people can see it because it's a long title. It's The Essential Guide to Raising Complex Kids with ADHD, Anxiety, and More. And I think I was telling you earlier, I think it's really interesting that I wrote Parenting ADHD Now first. And The Essential Guide is the book I think parents really need to start with, because it's the essence of a coach approach to parenting. It's the typical parenting book for kids who aren't so typical. It was really designed, it's very neurodiversity informed. And it's whether your kid's got ADHD, autism, anxiety, depression, or is just, stressed out from living in the modern world or whatever it is. And, or really, if your kid is neurotypical, this book is just a different framework on a parenting book. Like, I read a lot of parenting books when my kids were little, and they were great, some better than others, but none of them really helped me with the challenges I was facing with neurodiversity. And I really wanted to create a parenting book that parents could get their head around, that would help them feel good about what they were doing as a parent instead of beating themselves up, that would take away some of the stigma and shame so that people can parent positively and move forward. And coaching, I just found to be an amazing framework for that. So the Essential Guide was really written to be the parenting book that I needed when my kids were little that wasn't there. And I think it did that. Like, I'm very proud of it. I think it's a really great single piece. The greatest honor of my life was when my daughter-in-law read it in her early 30s. And she called me up and she said, Emma, I think I'm using this book to parent myself. And that, to me, that was like everything,
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, now you guys have some homework, but it's fun homework because this is the type of homework that helps us grow. And this is what we're all here for, to grow. Up until now, we've had all the tools that we had, but now we know more. And with more, we start to apply. And remember, we all tend to be the average of the 5 people we hang around with. And you don't have to hang around with them in person. You could totally hang around with them from a book. And so you can hang around with Elaine and she could be your best friend.
I love that. Thank you. I will take that honor. I will also tell you that if you're a listener instead of a reader, my eldest child voices the book for the Essential Guide. So you get to hear their lens as they tell the story, which I think is pretty cool too.
Yeah. Yes, and I have listened to these books. I will say that, and I have also my copies, right? Because once I listen to them, I like to go and reference the chapter. It's a lot easier to look at the chapter. But if you're like me or some of us with ADHD, that the book itself kind of gets us to freeze, listen to the audible version first and then buy the book, because then you can listen to the audible version as you're driving around, but again, now that you know the framework, it's easier when something comes up with your kid. You can go to and look at the book. That specific chapter is a little bit harder on the audible to like go back and forth to find it, but again, if you at least have that frame mind, it's easier to go and spot it, right? You're not supposed to capture everything. You're just, every time you look at this, just look at it as a tool and then add your own spin to it, because that's what this is about.
Beautiful. Agreed. 1000%.
Well, you had it. You were very, very fortunate to have Elaine here with us, and I look forward to more conversations with her. And please tell us where they can find you, Elaine.
Oh, fabulous. Diana, first of all, thank you. Thanks for having me and for doing this amazing work. It's been so lovely to watch your transformation as a physician as you've brought coaching into your world. It's a beautiful thing. People can find out more about us at impactparents.com or impactparents.com/podcast. We do have a podcast called Parenting with Impact, and lots of great information and resources on the website and on the podcast. So join us wherever you podcast or tune in, however works for you. There's a lot of resources at impactparents.com.
And on there, you can find how you can work with her or your kids can work with her. So please tune in.